And we are back. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Elevated Scaling. I am your co-host, Caleb Rosenberg, joined by Owen Granger and Daniel Uribe. Real excited to have you guys back today. Got a cool episode. I know Owen actually a few days ago had brought a topic to Daniel and myself's attention, and we're like, shoot, let's go ahead and bring it to the pod. So if you guys are new here, I'll kind of let Daniel give you guys a rundown as far as our background and kind of why we started the pod.
Cool. So, welcome to Elevated Scaling. Our mission here is to help business owners to reframe their mindsets, grow, and discover the real side of entrepreneurship. Whether you're a small business or a large business, join us as we share tough pills to swallow, the non sexy operations, and the journey to scale both in business and in life. Together, we'll break barriers and write our own stories. Tune in and let's embark on this transformative journey. Come on, guys, let's dive in.
Good deal, good deal. So Owen, I'll just kind of let you take it away. Kind of for the people, just kind of break down what you had brought to my attention and Daniel's attention kind of earlier in the week this week.
Yeah, for sure. We're in the process of scaling our own company, Momentum Shift Marketing, and we're really putting some things in place. And one of the reasons why we started the podcast was to partially document that, but also share things we've messed up in the past and, all these other things. But seems like a pretty good idea to just have a conversation about what scaling as a small business looks like what your goals are in terms of wanting to scale. What's the reason you want to scale? What does it actually look like in a systems and processes situation? What do you need to put in place so that you can scale sustainably? And then how do you develop? You're no longer, for us, it's busting ass on client fulfillment work or, one of our clients at the job site. Now they're turning into more of a operator. And that's a shift in mindset from being the lead at the job site or, going crazy on client work to thinking about growth, strategy, all of these buzzwords, but, they are important.
Yeah, 100%. I think to your point, when you're coming from that mind space, especially for, our clients being in the construction, home services, especially kind of construction space where you might be the lead foreman on a job site to your point, and that's really what you're most familiar with. And now all of a sudden you're supposed to think about how am I supposed to strategically scale? Because I know through our past we've had many times of just scaling in inefficient ways. One of the biggest things that I was going to mention to you guys, obviously right before the podcast, but we just decided to kind of throw it on, was the biggest thing that I've seen in the past, especially from us with personal experience, is scaling when you still have some of these, for lack of a better term, thorns in your side, or just these issues that might be minor. For example, for us, it was chargebacks on these devices in inventory. And so when you have a small issue and you're not fixing that issue on the management side, then all of a sudden that issue just magnifies once you scale. So yes, you're scaling, but now your problems are just becoming that much worse. Like your chargebacks for us, it would have been a couple $100. Like, okay, cool. Like a couple $100 off of, like a 13 grand invoice. Like, okay, whatever, it is what it is. But now when you're scaling, right, and you're getting to that, yeah, you're getting to 50, 60 grand a month, but your chargebacks are 4 grand on a Friday, 6 grand on the next Friday. It's like that your issues are just magnified at that point. And I know Daniel saw that clear as day because he was on kind of the face of that, right? So I didn't know, Daniel, you could probably touch on that as well.
Yeah, no, it's basically like you're saying we're just scaling a little. We were scaling a bit too quickly, and not having the right operations or the right people or the right hiring process, whatever it was. Um, that was just something that tend to happen. Um, just, go ahead. Like,
Yeah, you can't cover a leak in a boat with a band-aid and hope to go from a river to the ocean and expect it to work well, right? Like you have things in place that they might work right now as a small business, right? Whatever a small business makes a year in your niche, right? But you can't expect to add 50, 100 grand in revenue in a few months and not look for these issues to pop up unless you handle them before, which is, you know, unfortunate that you guys had to learn, I guess, while you were doing that instead of,
It
learning about
was
it
it was
before. But
fun. It was a good experience though, like
Yep.
yeah.
like number one is it was one it was the first time we touched a good amount of money as a team,
Mhm.
and we got a lot of learning experiences from there, especially because
Yeah.
like you said, like our quote unquote the person who we were subcontracting from,
Mhm.
that person was like, okay, here's that, you guys got to figure it out,
Yeah.
2 years going, and it's not only that, but like again, hiring, um finding somebody, like again, going back to the scaling too fast, like we're going to we're trying to open a second market. Everything was going good, but we had a meeting with said manager, and the manager like cleared our ears, like made us, like sold us a dream, right?
Mhm.
And we hired him, got him on there. Once we left the state, no, like yes, we something went down when we went to the next state, just because we didn't hear the advice of said subcontractor. Um, but even to that point, it wasn't. It was to the point where they weren't taking care of their employees. They were just doing it
Yeah.
their own way.
And in the setting that we're in, it's not like an accountant job where there's a shitload of great accountants, right? Like we're asking for a very specific personality type, a very
A people
specific
person.
skill set. Exactly. And so it's like it's a smaller amount of people in general. And so it's like it's great to hire quickly, but if you're hiring the wrong people, yep, they might get you to, 30K a month, but or 50K a month, but those are the exact same people who are going to be a massive detriment when you're at 100 or 200. And, you know, it sucks, but these are the conversations that you have before, especially now that you guys have learned a little bit, but, um,
100%.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
every single business has weak points, especially if you are doing the majority of things. Maybe you have crews or whatever actually handling the work, but if you're the one handling all of the back end operations, guess what? Some of those operations are going to suck. Like
Yeah.
you're not going to be great at everything, and you can't be. So it's like you have to identify these weak points and then be like, okay, not only is it a weak point right now at whatever your revenue is, but now this is the iceberg hitting your Titanic when you
Yeah.
actually get to the point revenue wise that you want to be at, but you're not ready for it because you didn't set yourself up for it. And it's
Yeah.
like when I thought about this idea, we were having a conversation about starting a new ad campaign. And, this is a problem not only for a lot of businesses, but specifically our clients, right? People who aren't in marketing slash advertising think if you run paid ads, you make money. And it's like maybe from a 30,000 or 50,000 foot view, sure. But there's a lot that goes into that, right? There's a lot of funnels, there's a lot of automations, there's a lot of email marketing, there's a lot of text like there's so much that has to go into keeping a prospect ecosystem healthy in a
Yeah.
certain respect, like meeting people no matter where they are on their buying journey. And it's not as simple as they give you the email address and their phone number and now they're a client. And so it's like there's a lot of people have to drop a little bit of ego when it comes to, oh, I know that this works, just do it. Instead of, oh, this is actually what it takes. And if you want to go from, I mean, if you want to see a 2x, 3x, 4x jump in your yearly revenue, the stuff that you're going to be doing is going to completely shit on all of your processes from before, to be quite honest. 90 to 95% of them, unless you're doing things correctly from the very start. But
which
things are
typically
going to
never
get
happens.
overhauled. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But
Most people don't go into like starting their business, especially folks that, and obviously we're guilty of this when we started our first business back in 2019. Like, you're not thinking about systems and processes and building an infrastructure that can sustain past, 100 grand a month, 200 grand a month. You're not thinking
no.
like that. You're just trying to get clients, get sales, get whatever the case might be onto the books, in your bank account at the end of the day. And most people aren't thinking, hey, what do I need to streamline my process? So when there's a flood or an influx of leads that come into my pipeline, that I'm able to handle those without it feeling like this is a madhouse.
So that's the thing, right? That's the difference between someone who's operating versus someone who's just a small business owner. Because you might go out and hire us, right? And we bring you 40 to 60 warm leads a month. If you don't have things in place, like you can have the best marketing in the world, you're going to be
Shit, the
screwed.
best sales team on the world
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, like you are going to be screwed if you don't have client experience, client communication throughout the follow-up process. Are they getting email marketing? Are they getting text message marketing? Are you calling them within the first 5 minutes of them submitting a lead form, right? It's like there's so many minute things that if you're pouring concrete or doing whatever, framing houses, drawing out houses, whatever it is,
Yeah.
you're not thinking about those things because that's not what you do, obviously. And there's a lot of small business owners who have dominated in local markets because they do great work
Yeah.
and they're still around, but their profit margins are 8 to 12%. And a
Because they
huge
just know
reason
their
for that,
skill.
yeah, exactly. And it's like they're not either looking to scale or they have absolutely no clue where to start, where they need basically a complete growth overhaul. And yeah, those are the small
I mean,
businesses that get sold for the most too.
it's because we came across one of those businesses, that the Dirtworks company. I
Mhm.
think we talked about it last podcast a little bit. But it comes to the point where it's always skill over business, and they built a business because they were good at a skill
Yep.
and they wanted to work for themselves. They never got into the business. They never thought that they were going to be able to sell the business
No.
or hire more people or whatever it was. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That some way somehow they had a couple people on their team. Now they don't. Now it's all hell breaks loose. They got a monkey with their tail cut off, trying to find its
Mhm.
tail. They're trying to figure out what to do next. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
they're at that little stop hold where, like you said, they don't know where to go.
Yeah. And that's such a common position for a lot of these businesses to be in. Like, you can have an amazing offer and fulfill incredibly well with 80, 90, 95% of your clients, right? You're kick ass. But if you never shift the mindset to being like a growth operator, you truly are never going to see the full potential of your business. And a huge part of that comes down to something Dan always says: delegation. You have to
Yeah.
find the right people and let them work, because then that frees you up. And then that's when you take your next step in your business journey, right? Where it's like, okay, I built this. This is awesome. Now what do I need to do to take over, to capture a large percentage of market share, to the point where I am now eating up 40 to 45% of what's available to me, right?
Yeah.
And you're very rarely going to run into a business that has that type of market share that got there by luck. Do you know what I mean? Like all of these, like it's the same thing. If you look at a president, all of them at 18 years old were in like the modern era have been planning out their path to the Oval
Yeah,
Office. Like
it's
you have to
strategizing.
set the exactly. You have to prepare, set the foundation, and then execute on a plan because God's not just gonna plop 45% market share into your lap because you're good at what you do. It'd be awesome if that's how it worked out, but that's just not the reality of things. And
Yeah, you
so
failed to plan, you plan to fail.
yeah, exactly, right? And it's like it to us it seems simple, but we come from a bit of a new school, more entrepreneurial driven than skill driven, where it's, you know, our parents and our grandparents, like you were saying, Dan, built something off of a skill. But
Right.
now we see our skill set, which granted, we become very good at marketing. We hire very well, all of these things. But at the true core of things, we're very, very good at processes, systems, and building things that can sustain multi tiered growth.
Yep.
And so for us, it's not as much about client fulfillment. Granted, it always comes down to doing great work. You have to before you move forward on anything. But you can always find people to help fulfill. It's very rare slash very expensive to find someone who's going to take you from where you are now to doubling, tripling it, right? You know, those are the $30,000 courses. Russell Brunson's $50,000 inside, you know, circle, whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? Or you can do what we're doing and learn through reading, also about mistakes,
Yeah.
and learning from people who have done it before and be like, okay, here's the framework, right? Like that's the problem with a lot of these things. Like a lot of these like with you growth services, people never actually finish it
Yep.
because even though there's a framework, they don't know fully the reason why they're doing it or what the goal is or what the end looks like or whatever the case may be. But a lot of them are still stuck in the mindset of, you know, being the boss who's doing 60 to 80% of the work.
That's that owner operator mentality, and we've ran into that
Mhm.
numerous times. Where and then Daniel and I and you have all had that not necessarily come to Jesus moment, but the thing that I'll realize with a lot of these owner operator guys is there's typically one of two circumstances: either they don't want to give up the margins, or they don't want to give up control. Me being somebody who is like more of somebody that likes to take ownership of something or likes to just I'm a control freak at the end of the day. So like
Mhm.
when I had to learn how to delegate, to Daniel's point, when we had to, like, it wasn't an option, that either you're going to grow with people or you're not growing at all, then that's when I had to like really let that go. And I've noticed that with guys who are owner operators where your margins might be high, which is why you don't want to grow in scale, because that means that yes, you'll get more revenue and more dollars, but your margins are going to drop. Not looking past that, that you're actually going to make more money and you're going to relieve
Way
yourself
more
of
money.
certain duties, right? And have
Yeah.
more time. And then on top of that, you don't have that sense of control, which that sense of control is also a false sense of control at the end of the day. There's people who do the job
Yeah.
better than you. There's people who fulfill better than you. There's people who
Mhm.
market better than you. There's people who dig dirt better than you, pour concrete better than you, fill in the blank, right? So you
Mhm.
find your these A players, or something that Daniel and I have done exceptionally well is turning even like B plus and like C plus players into like A minus B plus players essentially.
Mhm.
And that's
Their
not
next
something I'd
grade.
recommend. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that for everybody. Like we've had our, trust me, we've had our downfalls many times. To Owen's point, we're more so move as quickly as you can, figure it out along the way and make your mistakes. And then you kind of have this path that's paved for you. Like, okay, it's kind of like going to the bowling alley and you have these bumpers put up, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know, when the bumpers are put up, you're going to hit something. You're most likely going to hit a decent amount of pins, maybe even 40, 50% of the pins, that end goal. But when you are just going down this path and you're just making mistakes, you're essentially building these bumpers now to forge a path for you. So now Daniel and I are in this path where it's like, we know that this is the path forward. We know from all of our mistakes don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. These are essentially bumpers now. So we can
Mhm.
basically just bolt forward and we know we're
Yeah.
going to hit something just because we know of all these things not to do. Okay, maybe do this, maybe do this, don't do this instead of this. So things of that nature, I think it's hard for, to your point, an owner operator to come on the scene and then try to implement these things, especially when it comes to people, because in order to scale, you have to get good with people. There's no way getting around it. You have to be
Yeah.
good at bringing people on, managing people, letting people go, identifying the right talent, because it's not enough to just have the right people. You have to have them in the right seats, because there's also other
Mhm.
combinations where you have the right seats but not the right people, or the right people but not the right seats, or a mix of everything. You got to have the right
Yeah.
people in the right seats, and that's the only way to scale.
Mhm. And I mean, it's not all going to work out either. Like
No.
you can't be stuck in a state of preparation. I think that's a big issue with, I mean, not even just business, but so many things in life is you're taught for so long in school, right? Hormozy says this all the time. You're taught for years in school that there's only one right answer. When in life, especially in business, the only wrong answer is inaction.
Yep.
Because if
Yeah.
you do something, you will learn, right?
Right.
You might be right along the path right away and you get there quicker, or you screw up and learn and read and educate yourself, and then you're like, oh no, that's where I made the mistake. But you're still way farther down the road than the person who's planning. And Caleb, I think you mentioned this last podcast where it's like, you don't need a crazy logo, you don't need a crazy website. Get a landing page, an LLC, and a Stripe account, and you are good to go. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's the start. Now, once you're good at what you're doing and make money, you have to get out of that, almost like freshman mindset of,
Right.
ooh, I'm going to hang on to my 20% profit margin because I make 200K a year. Like, I'm scared to let this go, when
It's
actuality,
comfortability.
exactly. It's a safety blanket where it's like, dude, in 8 months, you could be making 500K
Literally.
annual. And it's like, you don't want to give up. Like, you're gonna make 190 this year.
Even if you're making the same, think, just even if you put it in that mind frame of, let's say you're going to make 200K, you're going out there digging dirt and making all the, and doing all this stuff. You're running excavators all day, things of that nature, right? You're going to make 200K. But I tell you, you can make 200K, just grow your, just put team members in place and you'll do more revenue. Yes, maybe you'll make less margins or whatever the case, but let's just play for an example that you take home the same amount of money,
And you're
but
just
you
sitting
now
at the
have the
crib.
time to go pick
Still
up your
gonna be
child,
easier. Yeah.
babysit your kid, do something for your wife or your husband or whatever the case
Mhm.
might be, right? You have that flexibility to not be outside for 10, 12 hours a day,
That's a
moving
great point.
dirt, pouring concrete, filling in the blanks, right? And now you're
Mhm.
able to move around, do things. You can, if your wife has to go to a doctor's appointment or your husband, you can take them, or things of that. Those are things that people don't think about when it comes to scaling and delegating, to Daniel's point, and pushing off that responsibility to obviously a qualified professional. We're not saying just go
Mm.
hire somebody and say, here, good luck. Like, that's where the
True.
systems, the processes, the training, all these things come into place. And over time, you start to give people more responsibility. But I think you're thinking super small if you think that hanging on to, what Owen's saying, if you're hanging on to 20% margins because A, you don't want to give up the money, B, you don't want to give up control, really any other excuse, fill in the blank, I really don't give a shit. Like, you're thinking on a very small mindset, and you're almost doing your family a disservice because you're telling them, and this is for the folks who have families and kids, maybe it's controversial, but if you're sitting there telling yourself that you want to be out there pouring concrete and digging dirt and putting up frames for housing or insulation, whatever the heck it is, right? You would rather do that for 10, 12 hours a day
Mhm.
consistently. And then when clients call, there's an issue, like you're the one to go do it. You would rather have that situation, and you have a family and kids.
Yeah.
I think that's extremely selfish, personally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's partially people don't know that it's possible.
Oh,
They
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
they
That's
see
that new school way to mind.
yeah, where it's like, Okay, someone else did it. That means you can do it too. You just have to figure out how they did it. It's not that hard. And
Yeah.
so if you've gotten past that point of, well, I can do this, there's just a bunch of steps that I have to take. And granted, if you want to do it by yourself, it's going to add a shitload more work. A
Mhm.
ton of work. But that's why you hire
And
someone like us, and it's taken care of.
And
Yeah.
you have to remember too, like if you ever wanted to do it yourself, like it's you still have to remember about the education behind what you're doing. So now you
Oh
have
yeah.
100+ hours of education, maybe 1,000+ hours of education that you need to work on before you even take action on these things, you know?
Hmm.
Because you don't
Yeah.
even know what you're doing. You're just skill based, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's, I think we also have to, or people have to kind of recognize that we come from, it wasn't until like the last few years, maybe the last decade or so, where like you started to kind of get these fluid workplaces, and I'll explain kind of what I mean by that. These fluid workplaces in the sense of you're going out with like your managers or your bosses, like you see people doing these TikToks with their bosses and all these kinds of things,
Hmm.
right? But even like when we were kids and growing up and things of that nature, and previous to that, like a lot of the stigma behind like, oh, your big bad boss or your boss was an asshole or whatever the case might
Hmm.
be, like people looked at a boss or a manager in a certain light. And when I was kind of put in that position, because at the end of the day, when I grew up, I was a people pleaser. So when I had to manage people now, like even when I did back in, these jobs that I held that were kind of these managerial positions, I always kind of was nervous about that. But you have to find a way, your way, to be not just constructive, like and actually put in structure to these people, but there is a healthy balance that you can have. You don't have to be, and I only say this because there's going to be people out there that say they don't want the responsibility, they don't want people to not like them, things of that nature. I know that there's a group of people out there that are going to say that, who think, yeah, I just don't want people to be mad at me, or I'm friends with all my people, things of that nature. Like that's cool and that's fine and dandy. Like Daniel and I were friends with pretty much all the folks who worked with us. Like we were all on great terms, but they knew like we had a structure in place. There were rules in place. If you broke those rules, there were consequences or repercussions to some degree. But we all had a good time. We all made it a great environment to work at, both virtually and in the field. So I think people have to understand that there is a mix that you can create, that balance that you can create, where you can still be the authority figure. And trust me, Daniel and I have played danced that fine line of being a little too friendly at times and like being the authority figure, because your authority can get challenged at times. So you have to be able to find that great balance of, I'm the authority, but I'm not here to make your life a living hell. I'm here to make you have a great opportunity, a great work environment, make you
Hmm.
excited to come to work, but and make a lot of money. We're all going to make a lot of money, but understand that there are rules in place. I will have consequences for you if it does come down to it. So just understanding that dynamic, and that there is a delicate balance that you can dance.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you pay for A players, right? Because that's their mindset
Yeah.
coming in.
Right.
Where it's like, even if someone does great work, but they're a workplace cancer, they're not an A player. Like
Yeah.
they just can't be. So you have to understand the mix of your team too. Like personality mixing is a huge aspect of how successful a team can be. So they're like, you actually have to put thought in to some of these things, to your point, where it's like it's possible, but you can't just hope everyone, is happy with you or whatever,
Oh
because
yeah.
it's just not going to be the case.
100%. You're not going to be the good guy at all times. You're not designed to be the good guy at all times. But
Mm-mm.
I think the other thing with people and bringing on a team, Daniel and I have been just super proponents of this in the past, of investing into your people. Don't be afraid. So many guys are, I've heard this conversation time and time again. Like, if I pour into my people, if I help them in the home services space, help them get extra certifications, help them get extra education, anything to that nature, sending them to an event,
Mm.
for example, that they're scared that they're going to go out and do it on their own. Like, you can't. you can't have that scarcity mindset. The marketplace is
Right.
so large when it comes to what you're
Yeah.
offering, whatever you're offering at the end of the day. You have to have an abundance mindset and understand that it's going to be far more beneficial for you to invest into your people than for you to hold them back. And now you can't have, like, kind of what I was saying earlier. We would take on like a B player or a B plus player or B minus, whatever the case might be, and upgrade them in the sense of investing into them, providing them education, providing them tips,
Mhm.
providing them tricks that we've learned over the years when it comes to sales, interactions with people, things of that nature. Even on the manager side, when we had started to have people like managing, like training them and then helping them, guiding them, things of that nature, like actually investing into these people so they can take those skills elsewhere. You can't go into the mindset of like, I only want to teach you things that you can keep here, because you're holding back your employee from being their full potential at your organization. And that's hurting
Yeah.
you at the end of the day, just because you're in this scarcity mindset that, oh, they're going to take all these skills and this information and leave me. Like, is that a possibility? Yeah. Could it be 50-50? Yeah. But you can't care about that stuff. You really can't.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time.
And at the end of the day, if you're paying top performers well enough and you're challenging them, those are the two things. If they're
Yeah.
being financially rewarded and they're being challenged, whether intellectually or in their job capacity or whatever the case may be, then they'll stick around as long as you're a
Yeah.
good person, right? Because your top players, very few of them will just take a salary and do very little work. Do you know what I mean? Like they want to work, they want to do what they're good at. So if you're not challenging them in that respect, you're going to be in a tough spot. A lot of this can come down to ego too, right? Where it's
Oh, 100%.
like you
It's a big physical chess game.
yeah, where it's like you can't be afraid if someone writes better ad copy than you that you hired, or because at the end of the day, if you can pull the best aspects of people's work and learn and develop that, you're going to be in such a better place than shutting someone down because their ad copy performed better than yours did. Bless you, Dan. But
Thank you.
it's I don't know. There's people want the tips, the tricks, the system that'll do it all for them. But at the end of the day, not only is it a mindset, but it's a mindset that has to be in real life within your business a lot. Like when it comes to your systems, the people you hire, if from the first time you contact a prospect, absolutely cold. Dan's laptop just ran out of battery, so he'll be right back. To the point that they've been a client for 4 years, 5 years, whatever the case is. You have to be. Actually, I kind of lost my train of thought. I'm going to be honest. Dan kind of threw me off.
No, you're good. I hate when that happens when you're
I
just
know,
on
dude.
a roll and then all of a sudden something takes it off. One thing I did want to mention too is, now that kind of threw me off. I had something that I had in mind.
I
That's
know.
hilarious. But when it comes to scaling, kind of this is way back to an earlier point that you had made. What are the things that about amplifying issues when you do scale and having the right infrastructure? That was one of the key things that happened last year to Daniel and I when it came to scaling and the
Mhm.
subcontracting with the government offer, is that our infrastructure, and this is something I very much learned the absolute hardest way from, because it destroyed us, right? And we
Yeah.
had to rebuild from absolutely nothing. So
Mhm.
the biggest thing that I learned from the right infrastructure is that everything cannot rely on one single individual performing at pretty much their top tier. Like,
Absolutely not. Yeah.
especially owner operators, like that's one thing I
Mhm.
want to make very, very clear to, when it comes to the scaling conversation, to these owner operator guys, which that's who a lot of our demographic is for our business and things of that nature, and the folks that we talk to. You guys have to understand that most of you guys are in a position right now that your entire infrastructure relies on not just you, but you being almost 100% healthy,
Yep.
100% body able and willing to be able to perform certain tasks. Like that's the position we were in. We were scaling an entire state last year, and the entire scaling method relied on not just me and my mind. It relied on me being able to be healthy, me being able to drive a vehicle, me being able to, move around, and me getting sick and not being able to perform those tasks like driving, like walking outside, that destroyed the entire scale of that
Hmm.
whole business plan. And a lot of guys are in. That's the scary part about what I don't think a lot of these guys are realizing is yes, you're an owner operator and you're making 20, 25, 30% margins. If you're not in the home services industry, you guys are probably making, potentially more. We're just, a lot of our guys are home service guys. So that's
Hmm.
kind of why we say 20 to 30% max. But if you're in that boat, it's like, let's just say, God forbid, you get sick for a week, 2 weeks. Let's say you get caught with COVID and you're down for, 2 to 4 weeks, right? Or something happens
Hmm.
and like you break a leg or whatever the case, and you
Or
don't
if you want to
have
go on
extra time.
vacation, like
Vacation,
you have to be there for everything to be successful. And
Yeah.
like risk is great. Taking on risk, I think, is one of the best
100%.
things that you can do. But if you're taking risk and saying, okay, I'm going to put all this money, all this time, all this energy into this plan, but this one thing has to work perfectly the entire time. That's too much risk. You know,
Yeah.
like that's not risky. That's stupid, and it can be very, very enticing to
It
want
could
to
bite you
grow
in
as
the ass.
fast as possible and hopefully, figure it out on your way. But you just can't do that.
Yeah.
Very, very rarely can you do that successfully, I'll say.
You have to have the infrastructure in order to scale.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about, I know a lot of the people who will come across this episode will probably be like, okay, you guys are saying a lot of these things, a lot of high level overview stuff,
Hmm.
but we don't know any tangible things. The whole idea
Yeah.
of this podcast, guys, is our job is to have a mix of episodes where we give you a high level overview, and it'll be titled as such, and in the description, like this is a high level overview of this concept. And then we'll have kind of following episodes or kind of these sub episodes that actually detail specific systems, specific
Mm.
processes, walking through kind of how to build out certain things. Like, for example, talking about a project management software, or talking about a process management software, or talking about the kind of intricacies of your CRM and how to really establish these different pipelines and things of that nature. So we will get
Mm.
into the weeds for you guys and really kind of break down specifics and give you examples of how we're actually implementing these things. But you don't want to compile that all into one. I'm a big kind of what you call it, um I can't think of the word, but basically, I'm very guilty of loading people with information a lot at once, because not only does my mind just move 1,000 miles an hour, but I'm constantly doing a bunch of things, and I just need to sometimes remind myself that not everybody has the same background as I do. So unloading information is almost
I
not
came to
detrimental.
realize that recently.
Yeah, it's like you just
I was
gotta
trying to
take it
train.
a notch back, you know? And so
Hmm.
being able to break it up, that's why we break up these episodes as high level overviews, and then actually having other episodes that dive into real world examples and systems and tools and tips and
Hmm.
tricks, ideas, things of that nature for you guys. So I do want to make that disclaimer as well.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah,
Do you guys
that's
have anything else?
no,
I feel like
no,
we've
that's
hit
a
on a lot.
yeah, that was a topic that I know has come up many times in the past, and
Hmm.
with us living real world examples of the kind of like trials and tribulations of that, and
Hmm.
failing, falling flat on our face several times, scaling it, for different reasons, whether it be not enough funds, not the right people, not the right infrastructure, not
Hmm.
systems and processes being in place. Like, I mean, you name it. Like, guys, I'm telling you, we have made the mistakes left and right to know this is how you do.
Yeah. Very, very true.
Oh man, but yeah, I'm good. That's all I have for today. You guys have anything else for today?
No.
No, I think I'm good.
Good
My
deal. Good
connection
deal.
was a little unstable. I apologize for
Yeah.
that.
You
Yeah,
good?
we're good. We're good. But of course, again, this is Elevated Scaling. I am co-host Caleb Rosenberg, joined by Owen Granger and Daniel Uribe. If you guys do need help with kind of implementing some of these systems, these processes, or even when it comes to identifying the right talent, bringing the right talent on, and something we didn't touch on, which we'll touch on in a future video, is in a future podcast, is really getting people to build or to buy into your vision. First having a vision, but then getting, how do you get people to actually buy into that vision and get them 100% behind you and everybody's ready to run through a brick wall for you? So that's something that
Mhm.
we'll talk about in future episodes. But if you guys do need help with this, if you're looking to get into the government contracting space, if you're looking to really elevate your marketing to the next level through paid advertising, organic advertising, I mean, you name it, we do it all. And we have our fractional CMO services as well. So if you guys do need that, feel free to go to the description. You'll see our website, momentumshiftmarketing.com. Feel free to check us out. You'll see our contact information in there as well. But again, I'm Caleb Rosenberg, Owen Granger, Daniel Uribe. Appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will see you guys next week.